What will it take to get Luke Shen out of the lineup? Are Phil Thomasino and Yuso Parsonen's days in gold numbered? We're going to answer those questions and plenty more on today's Mailbag episode of the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this happy hump day episode, welcoming any first-time listeners, and of course, giving that shout out to our everydayers and to our Locked On Predators insiders. We appreciate your support. We love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio. And my friends, you know I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
On today's show, our insiders asked, Emma and I are going to answer. We have a special Wednesday mailbag episode, and we have a lot of topics to dive into. We are going to talk Luke Shen, Thomasino, Parsin, and we are also going to talk about why are the Nashville Predators hitting all of those posts. But before we dive into all of these great questions, we do want to let you know you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, we reached out to our Locked On Predators insiders and said, do you have questions? If you do, we will answer them. And our insiders, it's a great community, came back and had some great questions. If you want to become a Locked On Predators insider, know there is always room for you at our table. You can find details on how to join our subtext community in the description of this video. But we're going to dive right in and tackle a question on a topic that, Emma, you have big feelings about. One of our insiders wants to know, and I love it, we're just asking the question, what will it take to have Luke Shen pulled out of the lineup? Why was Del Gaizo sent back down? It's kind of a 2-in-1 since Del Gaizo should be playing.
Yeah. Like I said, the whole Luke Shen thing, just based on the eye test, it shouldn't be a hot take, but apparently it is. He needs to be out of the lineup. And as far as I'll answer the Mark Del Gaizo part first. I will say he and Shen, you can't really consider them one for one because it's a lefty and a righty. So like, it's not like one is or could be a replacement for the other. But the thing with Mark Del Gaizo, and I wouldn't be surprised, I'm not reporting anything. I have no idea, no information here, but a lot of times you might see with, as far as guys getting sent back down to Milwaukee, we saw this a lot with Mark Jankowski last year, that, you have to remember that every day that these guys spend on the Predators roster, they have to get paid more. And so if they're not going to be playing and, they had a game Monday, they don't play again until Thursday. If they're not going to be playing, sometimes they are quote unquote sent back to Milwaukee on paper. But
it's not geography.
Yeah. So it's, again, I'm not reporting that. I have no idea if that's the case here, but I will say I wouldn't necessarily think of one, like Luke Shen being a replacement for Mark Del Gaizo or anything like that. It's just the fact that he has a 2-way contract and they still have the flexibility to do that and save some cap space if they need to. Yeah, I hate to say this because I want to make it very clear, I am not wishing this on anyone, but I genuinely think the only way Shen comes out of the lineup is if he's injured. And I don't want that for him. I don't want that for anybody. But I mean, I don't know what it is. Barry Trotz loves him some Luke Shen, and he went out and got him. And again, Luke Shen is one of those guys that really comes through in the playoffs. He
Mhm.
did it, he did it for Tampa Bay against the Islanders, and that's why Barry Trotz was like, I want that guy. And then he did it for Nashville against Vancouver last year. And so it's like he has his moments, but those moments are not in the regular season games, it seems, when playing under Andrew Burnett's system.
Yeah. I will say that Luke Shen is a unique piece in the physicality and size arena. He is built like a brick poop house. And there aren't a lot of Nashville Predators on the defensive end of things that are built like that. There aren't actually a lot of forwards built like that either, if we're talking about it. And we all know the goalies aren't built like that. So there is an element of like Luke Shen physicality size wise that plays into it. I think there is also an element, and this is something I think we're going to talk about later on in another question, of Andrew Brunette likes a known commodity. And you know what you're going to get from Luke Shen. You might not love everything about it, but you know what you're going to get from Luke Shen. And I think maybe Andrew Brunette, and I jokingly say this, has trust issues. So I think there's an element of that. I would like to see some sort of a rotation, because if you, and again, you mentioned this, you don't want to see Brady Shea on your third defensive pairing. But if you pop Fabro and Del Gaizo in, that gives you a different looking defense. If you need some of that size and physicality, then you pop Shen back in. But there really is not a rotation right now. It's Luke Shen all the time, 24/7 Luke Shen. There are things that I think Luke Shen is good at on defense. There are some things that I think Luke Shen is not as good at anymore on defense. So I think it's an element of familiarity. I think it's an element of, they love this guy. And look, Luke Shen, high value in the locker room, high value with the younger players, not questioning
Lovely.
that.
He's a lovely person.
He is actually a great guy. He's a
He really
great
is.
guy. But yes, there is an eye test disparity defensively. But I think Andrew Brunette likes the devil he knows better than the devil he's not 100% sure about. So I think there's an element of that.
Yeah.
We have a question from Matt H. Matt, we are glad you're back. He had to step away for some things, but he is back. And I think this is a really interesting question that we are actually probably not going to answer the way you want, Matt, but hang with us. My question is, what is a good record/point total that the Preds need to try and shoot for by the AllStar break in order to be sitting in a good spot for a playoff berth? This is actually a tough question to answer in the way that Matt asks it. But you go ahead and take a swing at this one, Emma. You're our numbers. You're our numbers person.
Oh, that's scary. If I'm the numbers person, yikes.
I'm the English history person. I need you to be the math and science person.
Oh, Anne, that's never a good thing if you need me to be the math and science person. No, I think so. Here's my issue with questions like that, and we talked about this before the show too, that when the season is so long and it's not only dependent on, the season doesn't happen in a vacuum. It depends on what's going on with the rest of your division, the rest of the conference. There's so many factors at play here that I don't necessarily believe in those like magic numbers when it comes to points in the season, like the AllStar break, because if you look at, anything can happen. And the Predators of last season are evidence of that. Heading into the AllStar break, this did not look like a playoff team.
Oh gosh, no.
Then what happened? 19-game point streak. Like and then, you have other teams who can go in the opposite direction too after the AllStar break. They have a hot start and then they start trending downward. And then again, like I said, it has to do with what else is going on in the division. What's Dallas doing? What's Winnipeg doing? Are they still winning? It's a lot of things are at play there. So I don't love looking at the AllStar break as the, defining point in the season, just because I feel like there's so much that can happen before and after.
It's still early.
Yeah.
It's still early in the season
I
to
think
make that
people
call.
Yeah, and people look at the AllStar break, understandably so, as like the unofficial halfway point of the season, but it's really not. Or not necessarily. And again, I just think it's too hard. I know that's a cop out answer. I'm sorry, but I don't I don't know that I feel comfortable putting a number on it
Mhm.
um at that point in the season.
Yeah. There are so many ebbs and flows in an 82 game season that it's really hard to kind of benchmark something that far out. I will say this. I'm not going to give you a number, but a couple things I think have to be better at All-Star break. Some things you need to see consistently from this team at the All-Star break to be considered a team that's going to be able to get into the playoffs. You've got to see better scoring, like better finishing on a lot of the chances. And that, especially for me, is in the middle six. We aren't seeing a lot from kind of that middle six. I think your top players have to continue to be your top players and get better. We're slowly getting to that, but it's been a little slow. I also think Steven Stamkos has to be comfortable in going by the All-Star. I mean, like, you need to be able to see a comfortable, settled in Steven Stamkos for sure by the All-Star break. Otherwise, I think it gets a little hairy for the Predators. So those are just some benchmarks, Matt, that we're going to throw out. Not a number, but we really tried. We really tried. Coming up, our insiders ask questions that a lot of us are wondering about, and we're going to talk about it. Let's talk about Phil Tomasino and Juuso Parssinen. And are the 8-1 Winnipeg Jets for real? Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It's not you against 1,000 strangers. It's just you against the PrizePicks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return with PrizePicks, your picks are still alive. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So check it out at PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, Emma, we asked our insider community, and they, of course, as always, come through. We love chatting with our insiders. We do some pregame chats and we do some in-game chats. We rely on them for our one word and now for our mailbag episode. And we are going to answer Dustin's question. And I think this is a question a lot of people in the NHL are asking, Dustin. Do you think the Jets are for real? So far, they seem to have played one of, if not the easiest schedule in the NHL. Do you foresee them coming back down to earth?
I think that depends on what your definition of back down to earth is. I mean, I think a lot of us, I mean, at least myself, I saw Winnipeg taking a step back this year just with the pieces that they lost. They're relying, they have a new head coach. They're relying on a younger core. They're relying on a lot of their young players to really step up into bigger roles, which not saying that they can't do that, but it was kind of what we were talking about before, that they're not proven commodities yet. So you don't really know what you're going to get. And I mean, I think it's certainly promising, the start that they've had. Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll have to see, because I think it depends on a lot of things, if they can stay healthy, if they can
Right.
kind of handle the rigors of the schedule. And, as far as staying healthy goes, I mean, look at Utah. They got off to a hot start, and then they lost their top two defensemen kind of immediately, and
That's
they
tough.
came crashing back down to earth. And so I don't know what's going to happen with Winnipeg. I think, again, it's hard to say right now because they do have a lot of young players who have not, played at this sort of elevated role for a full 82 game season. But for right now, I mean, good for them. They're a fun team to watch.
Yeah, they
And
really are.
you always have Connor Hellebuck as the great equalizer. Like, as long as you have him, you have a chance.
Yeah, you could put me and my mom out on the ice and Connor Hellebuck in net, and there's a chance.
Yeah.
There's a chance. This is such an interesting question, and I think a lot of people, like I said, are asking this around the league because they have been off to a hot start. And look, here's something that the Nashville Predators know. Kyle Connor, very good. He just seems to be one of those players who sometimes has Nashville's number. But Nino Niederreiter, miss you, love you. 4 goals, 8 points. Like, they just have so many players going right now. That could continue. That could fall off. I would agree that maybe the schedule works in their favor. And if you look at their 8 wins, a lot of them were close games. They had overtime games, Minnesota, Chicago, Seattle. They had a lot of games that were actually 1-goal games, but then they got the additional empty netters. So they're close games. But here's the thing, good teams find ways to win, and they are finding ways to win even in these close games. I will say this, November will tell us a lot about Winnipeg, because they play Tampa Bay twice. They do play Utah. They play Colorado and Dallas. They play the Rangers. They play the Panthers twice. They play the Kings. They play Vegas. Like, their November schedule will really be a great thermometer, a measure of how hot this team really is and can be down the stretch against some of these teams that are going to be postseason teams. So I think keep your eye on it, but I mean, I kind of believe in them. I kind of think it's for real. Like, a lot is going well for them. I think a lot would have to turn for them to completely fall off a cliff. So keep your eye on the Winnipeg Jets. So Chris has another question. This is, again, you want to talk about questions everybody's asking. Chris is got his pulse or got his hand on the pulse of the Nashville Predators fan base. I would like some discussion on what you think will happen with Parsin and Thomasino. You talked all summer about Thomasino benefiting from a change of scenery, but no one is trading right now. Will those two just stay scratched until injuries happen and they can step in? This goes back to my Andrew Brunette might have trust issues.
Yeah.
Because it seems like Andrew Brunette values consistency and the devil he knows over high ceiling that is somewhat unproven with consistency. And that is the basket in which I think you find Phil Thomasino and Juuso Parssinen. And it's frustrating because to get out of that basket, you have to be in games,
It is frustrating. It's like one of those, like when you're in college or, you're really young and you're applying for jobs, and every single job, it's like entry level, but requires 5 years of experience. I'm like, dude, well, how am I going to get any experience if no one's going to hire me? That's kind of
Yes.
what it feels like when these, with these guys. And I think that it is a tough question. I wish I had answers. I still do think that, I think of them slightly differently. Of course, they're in the same basket now because they're both not playing. But I think, coming into training camp, I had much higher hopes for Juuso Parssinen. He has not quite taken off. I mean, even when he did play, he didn't quite take off the way that I was expecting. I was pleasantly surprised by Phil Thomasino.
Agree.
I still think, though, that if you kind of take a step back and look at everything, the Predators are going to, or Barry Trotz wants to trade for a center. He wants to get a center. This team needs a center.
Mm-hmm.
These two guys now, I think both I still believe would benefit from a change of scenery. As much as it pains me to say it, I think that they would. And those are valuable pieces for you. And you have to remember too, like, these guys not on, or Parson at least not on a two-way contract anymore. So if he gets sent back down to Milwaukee, he can be, but you're paying him a lot of money to play in Milwaukee. And so I think that, I mean, right now you're paying him a lot of money to not play
anywhere. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's, I don't know. It's hard, but I'm just saying, like, Barry Trotz wants to get a center. Like, those are the first two guys I'm looking at as far as like trade bait for, for a center.
Yeah. And I do think that there is much more to both of their games than what we have been able to see, especially under Andrew Brunette. It's so tricky because where the Predators are now, it's like there is this sort of win now-ish mode, the next 2 to 3 seasons. And so on the one hand, I see that you have to put the guys out there that you think are going to get you there quickly. But you also have a win down the road window, and you have to be developing the players for that window as well. And you could see how a Phil Thomasino, if, as the lineup changes and people leave and, some of these veterans, move on or step away, you can see where Phil Thomasino could have a place, but right now he doesn't have that place. And so it feels a little wasteful. And yet I understand the window looks different and you want your veterans out there. But I feel like they're two players whose leash is a little short. And I'm with you. I thought Phil Tomasino had a great camp. I thought he's looked really good in a lot of the ice time that he's had. Juuso Parssinen, not as good as I had hoped that he would be, maybe, but I also think he needs time. He needs playing time. He needs ice time, and they're not getting it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because Parssinen got one game and he did not perform exceptionally well. It was not great. I will say he did get better as the game went on, but I think he had a turnover like his first shift, and it, is one of those where it's like, okay, again, Andrew Brunette, trust issues, very short leash on these young guys. And so it's unfortunate because again, see Luke Shen creating turnovers all the time. He's still out there. So
and I think it doesn't help when you start 0-5 and you feel this pressure to, like, we have to get this right pretty quickly. And Andrew Brunette is going to go with the people that he knows. And not the ones that he's wondering about. So I think it's kind of a perfect storm for the two of them. I agree with you. These are players that I think you got to keep an eye on if it comes time to make a deal. But it stinks because I don't think that we have seen them given the full opportunity in Nashville that they could really benefit from.
I agree.
So, yeah. But we haven't heard anything specific. We, of course, will keep our ears to the ground and let you know if anything changes. But those are our thoughts on Phil Tomasino and Juuso Parssinen as well. Coming up, we are going to talk about all of those posts that they keep hitting, and we got to have that center conversation. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, and it's all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Emma, Tanner is asking about something that I refer to as the sound of failure. The sound of the puck hitting the post. It's the sound of failure. Tanner says, I'm newer to hockey, so I apologize if this is an ignorant question. First of all, in our insiders community, everybody is welcome and there are no ignorant questions. So we don't care Ask away. Tanner wants to know, are the consistent post hits usually this common? Lord, it does not feel like it.
No, they're not. And it's not an ignorant question, Tanner, because I mean, I forget now. I think it was 2 games ago. I looked at the numbers for it, and I mean I think I jokingly said it on Twitter, and then I went and looked it up. I was like, "Oh, that's not a joke. That's correct."
Nobody
That
is laughing.
that the Predators led the league in posts through the first, I think, 5 or 6 games, or 6 or 7 games. I don't know. I think they've hit like 16 posts already.
Golly.
And it's, you imagine it is frustrating because you imagine how close those were. How different could that season have started? Maybe not 0-5 when you have all those posts, especially you think about when they're happening in games.
Oh,
Steven Stamkos, the ding heard round the world in that first game against Dallas
yes.
would have tied the game late in the third period to send it to overtime. Like loudest post I've ever heard.
Oh,
It
it reverberated in your soul.
it did. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's not just you, Tanner. I was looking at just shots on goal. Philip Forsberg right now is 4th in the league in shots on goal. Roman Josi 7th. Forsberg only has 4 goals. Josi still looking for that first goal. And those are 2 players that you have heard the sound of failure from. Gus Nyquist has had that. You talked about Steven Stamkos. It's like there is just something about the post. It's like a magnet for the puck and Predators' disappointment. It's just a whole thing. It's got to get better, Tanner. It's got to get better.
You think when it happens that much, it's like if you keep putting the puck on the net as often as these guys are, and I feel like that I've been beating this drum since last year. It's like eventually your luck's got to change because
Right.
this is just puck luck at this point,
Mhm.
with the number of posts that they're hitting. And like again, it's got to be as frustrating as it is for us. Imagine how it is for the players, because like the guys you mentioned, plus like Colton Sissons had a post. I think
Yes.
Cole Smith has hit one. Like it's one of them. They've got to
It's
start
spreading
going.
like pink eye, y'all. It
Yeah.
has spread like pink eye in a locker room, but
Ugh.
it's gonna get better. It's gotta get better. Yeah. So, John, one of our insiders wanted to know, who do you have centering Stamkos and Nyquist? Currently, John likes Colton Sissons. What's your pick for that, Emma?
I still am undecided on this
Mhm.
because I think, I want to give Tommy Novak that chance to prove himself as a 2C. But the problem is he and Luke Evangelista play so well together
Which
that
they
I
do.
I don't want to split them up. So for that reason, I say Sissons. I would say probably go with Sissons just because I don't want to split up Evangelista and Novak.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I really want Tommy Novak to have that opportunity. I think he can grow into that and be very good at it. But you have to go with the combinations that work, especially when the season has started as it does, and you have got to be building momentum. And you do see Novak and Evangelista work well together. And Colton Sissons, again, Mr. Potato Head. There is nowhere he can't be. He could be the e-bug and it would work out just fine. Nobody would worry. So I agree. I think Colton Sissons is a reliable, safe choice. I really would love for Novak to have that opportunity. I'm just not sure that that's going to happen until maybe the Predators get the ship righted and get back up in the standings and Andrew Burnett feels like, okay, maybe we can try something again.
Again,
Yeah.
proven commodity. Colton Sissons is the known commodity. He
Yes.
may not, Tommy Novak has more offensive upside for sure. And I mean, not even just upside. He is, producing numbers offensively. But I think a big part of that is the fact that he's with Luke Evangelista. So
Yeah.
that's it for me. I think you got to go with Sissons.
We are going to wrap up this mailbag episode with John's second question. And we did put out there, look, we will answer the big questions of life if that's what you have to ask. And John came through for us, Emma. Extremely deep question of life. What's your favorite Broadway musical that you've seen? John hasn't seen many, but he likes The Book of Mormon, Hamilton, and Come From Away. Those are his favorites. So, Emma, let's be honest with our listeners. What's the musical you and I can't stand?
We are not fans of Cats here at the Locked On Predators podcast. I'm not a fan of Cats the animal, much less Cats the musical. So, yeah.
It's literally people dressed up like cats, acting like cats, y'all.
No.
Emma and I, we joke a lot about,
That's the one thing we can agree on.
We
Every
agree.
time if we feel like we're falling short in some way, or like we need to hype ourselves up, we just say it's going to be better than Cats.
Better than Cats, baby. Yeah. But what is your favorite that you've seen?
So I haven't seen it live, unfortunately, and it's still a goal of mine, but I love Hamilton. We know.
Brilliant.
I'm a big Hamilton fan. I have a background as a dancer, so I appreciate a musical with, good choreography. And I will say the only one that I've seen on Broadway, like actual Broadway in New York, was An American in Paris. And the choreography was amazing. Incredible. And so I would have to go with those two for different reasons. I give the slight edge to Hamilton. I would love to see it in person, although at the same time I'd probably be singing along the entire time,
Very
which
hard
would
not to.
not be fun for whoever ends up sitting next to me.
Yeah. I've seen a lot. I've got a couple of Broadway tattoos. Like, I'm very into Broadway. I love Come From Away. If anybody has not seen Come From Away, it is on Apple. I think it's on Apple TV. You must watch it. It's brilliant. And I love that one too, John. But I recently saw Suffs, the musical on Broadway, and it is a musical about the suffragist movement. And it's not just about like, hey, women want the right to vote, but it talks about the different approaches that different groups wanted to take and how they got it done and the struggles that they had. And it was brilliant. Like, laughed, cried, like ugly cried. It was fantastic. So I love Suffs, the musical. So, and it's closing on Broadway. So if you are in New York anytime soon, it's a must see. So that's my current one. The funniest one I've ever seen is Something Rotten. And I laughed so hard I almost barfed. So that's another really good one. So anyway, John, those are some of our favorite musicals. Of course, plenty of hockey still left to talk about. And we're going to pivot right back to hockey on tomorrow's show. The Predators will be hosting the Edmonton Oilers. But there's going to be something very different about this Edmonton Oilers team. We're going to talk about the absence of Connor McDavid from the lineup on tomorrow's show. Before we wrap up this episode, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio, and I will be on 102.5 tonight for Penalty Box Radio Live at 8 p.m. You can check Sean Smith and I out there. That is going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow with that Edmonton game preview. We'll see you then.